It's Rads. So I apologize that this is going to stay small like this. For some reason, when I try to record this, it's not letting you see my face. So we need to see my face. So, anyways, we're going to talk about forestry today. We're going to combine forestry practices and then also some sustainable practices to talk. I think we all know this, and please don't feel like you have to write this in your notes that a forest is anything that's dominated by trees and woody vegetation. The vast majority of forests in our country are privately owned, which does kind of make things a little bit interesting in terms of forest preservation because they are on private land a lot of the times. But when we're talking about national forests, things like the White Mountain National Forest up in New Hampshire, for example, they are typically pretty preserved because you have to pay something if you're going to use them. It's not usually much, but it's something. And this is important because forests do a whole lot for us, right? Don't feel like you have to write all the details for these notes, but definitely know these three big things, right? They're big at filtering air pollution. So we know with photosynthesis, they're taking things in. They'll actually take out a lot of the harmful things. So VOCs are like the smelly things in air. Nitrous oxides are another thing that's produced by like car exhaust and things along those lines. And particulate matter as well. They'll filter that out. It gets stored in the tree. It's good for us. It helps the air quality a little bit. They also, obviously, we know, take in and store CO2, which was a huge contributor to climate change. So the more trees we have, the more carbon dioxide is getting taken out of our atmosphere and stored in those trees, often long term. And then obviously their habitat. Lots of things live in these things. So that's important too. Now, obviously, though, and you remember from the True Acts, we need timber and lumber for lots of things. We use it for a lot and we need it. So we have to talk a little bit about how we're getting timber, but also maybe how we could use it a little more sustainably. So typically now what we do is clear cut. And you see these images over here where basically we've gone in and we've just kind of decimated the area. We cut down all the trees, we slash them down, we burn what's left. It's quick, it's fast, it gets us a lot of lumber. Foresters will go back through and then replant an area, which sounds nice and all, except it is still a reduction in biodiversity because we're often planting, only a few types of trees. And we obviously have gotten rid of a lot of the wildlife that, lives off of those trees in the process. So we've still decreased biodiversity. It's still not great. Like we try, but it's not great. When we clear cut, we have some other really big things. Number one is soil erosion, right? Those root structures stabilize that soil quite a bit. And when they're gone, now we can have a lot of soil running off into rivers. And you can kind of see that happening here. Along with that soil often comes a lot of pollutants and nutrients, which we know can lead to eutrophication and algal blooms and ultimately hypoxic conditions. And then we also have a lot of the sediments being deposited in those rivers. In a lot of cases, first, it makes it really cloudy, which is difficult for the wildlife that's there, but it can actually warm the water as well. So now we've got increased temperatures, which is not the greatest. It also is going to, well, we already mentioned increase the stream temperature. You're losing shade, right? We've lost the shade of those trees. So now the soil is struggling a little bit there, and we've got all this stuff going on with that. And also we're dealing with flooding and landslides because we have a lot less time for the water to leach into the soil. Also, a lot of that heavy machinery as it's gone through has compacted that soil. So now the soil is dry, it's compact, we don't have the root structure. It just means that water is kind of running right off it. So we end up with flooding and we'll end up with landslides as well. One of the other things we've started to do is use tree plantation. So we grow the same type of tree in rows, kind of like we grow corn. You can see it here, except we grow in the trees. And they'll just repeatedly grow those same trees. So it's, I guess, better in that we're not taking down like an old growth forest. However, it does lower biodiversity in that area, right? And we know if there's less diversity, there's less resilience. So that's not a great thing. And in addition, all of those trees are typically planted at the same time and they're the same age. We know as trees age, they offer habitat to different types of species. So we're losing that biodiversity. And in addition, we're not getting any of that dead and decaying matter that's also kind of fueling or feeding the soil and also providing habitat for other things. So we're losing a lot of habitat there. So I already think I've gone through these. Like, please don't write this down. I actually won't just take this slide out, but you get the idea, right? We're cutting stuff down. We're causing issues. This one I will show you in class. So I'm going to skip it for now. So then the question is, what do we do? Because we can't just not use wood, right? We need lumber, we need timber for a whole lot of things. So how do we use it in a way that is sustainable so that we can continue to use it? First of all, one of the things as a consumer that you can do is you can look for that little logo, that little leaf logo. That stands for the Sustainable Forestry Initiative, and any product that is labeled with that you can know that the materials have been harvested in a sustainable manner. We also have a lot of U.S. Forest Service programs that are going to manage wildlife and ecosystems that currently exist to try to maintain them. And the other thing we can do is we can try to use some more sustainable harvesting methods. Now, we're going to talk about these in class, so I'm not going to get into it a ton in this video, but you have things like selective cutting, shelter wood cutting, strip cutting, and certification, which again, we'll talk about in class. You guys are going to do fun little skits with that. Don't worry. Now, one of the other things that has happened with forests, and this is an interesting, there's a lot of debate on this. We know that a lot of times we have built our homes close to forests, and forest fires are actually a really natural thing in a lot of fires, in a lot of forests. In some cases, there's actually trees whose seeds won't start to germinate until they hit a certain temperature. And they have evolved basically to when a fire goes through, it raises those temperature, and those will be the new seeds that grow and germinate. So like some of these are very natural. However, we as humans have suppressed a lot of these fires, these natural fires from occurring because we don't want them to happen near, our stuff that we'd have to control. The problem with this, we get a lot of biomass buildup, right? We get a lot of dry tinder kind of at the bottom. A lot of the dead trees and things that are there are not getting burned down. Like we see a lot of times in forests, just dead trees that are there. All of that is just going to make future fires worse. So one of the things we've started to do is to, I didn't talk about monitoring. We also have people that monitor forest fires, so they would find them like as soon as they happen and put them out. So again, just leading to this buildup. So when a fire does happen, it's usually pretty bad. I already talked about that. By the way, don't write this slide down. So what we've started to do now is have what we call prescribed burns. So a prescribed burn will be we go in and to an area and we purposely light a fire in such a way that it can be controlled, but we still get the benefits of the fire for that ecosystem. So we get a lot of the dead biomass gone. So it's fuel for those fires, but also the nutrients that are trapped in there can then become back into the ecosystem, and it gets rid of a lot of those dead trees that are really susceptible to disease and pests. So that's good. Obviously, it says here, small controlled fires burn a lot of dead biomass. That's good. And we promote nutrient recycling. I kind of all said that in the same slide. So this, I'm going to move this. When I'm in presentation mode, you can see this all. Sorry, it's not moving. There we go. All right. So you're going to have to freeze it to go take those notes. Sorry. So one of the things you can see here is that when we do prescribed burns, they typically will go up against a water source, and they basically like make a perimeter that can't be burned, and they light within that. And it's a very precise thing. They take into account what the weather conditions are, how the wind is blowing, all that kind of stuff. And it's again, very, very, very controlled. They make sure it's contained to where it needs to be. So it's kind of we get a little bit of the best of both worlds there, where we're able to get the benefits of those burns without actually having like actual fires. Yay. Here's your FRQ that you guys are going to work on. I want you to identify 2 characteristics of a forest that develop when fires are suppressed and explain how prescribed burns could address each of those characteristics, how they would rectify it. So you guys already saw that. Like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about some of those sustainable practices in class. So you'll have some notes on that. For this, just kind of list them and we'll be good. All right. Happy learning, guys.